Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We're here today to break a little bit of breaking news to you that we find very interesting. This news broke yesterday, and it comes out of the Federal Trade Commission. And in a nutshell, the Federal Trade Commission is warning of legal action against entities who are breached as a result of failure to patch the Log4Shell vulnerability. It's a very interesting piece of news. For me personally, I've never seen the FTC act on cyber incidents proactively. But as always, we've got Matt here to discuss it with us, and we've also got Tyler from Pax8, Pax8 General Counsel, and also has a lot of expertise in the regulation at the federal level. So, gents, thanks for joining us, and let's dive right in.
Yeah. So it started this morning when I saw in my socials some links to Catalan's article saying that the FTC warns action against companies who fail to mitigate Log4Shell, which is great, right? I think this is actually an interesting and wonderful topic. I think it has nuances that will make a difference in our world, but I don't know how much it'll matter to the general MSP directly today. But I will say that the FTC said, we intend to use its full legal authority to pursue companies that fail to take reasonable steps, right? You get into this reasonable person rule again, right? You get into this conversation on defensibility. Reasonable steps to protect consumer data from exposure as a result of Log4J, space. And they go on to say, or similar known vulnerabilities in the future. So I touch on that. It links to the FTC article where the FTC starts out with Log4J as a ubiquitous piece of software used to record activities in a wide range of systems. It was disclosed when vulnerability is discovered, it's risk or loss of breach personal information, the duty to take reasonable steps to mitigate known software vulnerabilities, blah, blah, blah. And so the FTC is saying, listen, we're going to start suing under our powers, under the powers granted under GLB, and I'm going to let our attorney say it because I mispronounce it every time. But Tyler, I wanted to bring you on and really kind of highlight you and let you kind of just run with this for a minute. But what are your thoughts on this impact to the general MSP and this impact when we start thinking about software vendors or people that do produce code? So let me go ahead and get you on main screen here and go ahead and run with it.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. So let's take a step back and take a larger view of this, right? So what the FTC is trying to do here is drive behavior, mostly drive behavior in the software producer space, in what I've got to believe are social media and spaces where you're going to have lots of daily active users, usernames, passwords, that kind of stuff. They want companies to take this known security vulnerability seriously and patch it right away. That's really what they're trying to do here. But it's not about penalizing people. It's not about, they just have to show you the stick that they have that they can help you with if you don't do what everybody knows is the right thing to do anyway, right? Yeah. So that's really what they're trying to do. So let's just put that on the table first, right? And they're using a couple of different authorities to do this. One is the Federal Trade Commission Act. The other is Gramm-Leach-Bliley, GLB. Gramm-Leach-Bliley applies more to like financial institutions and folks that are offering financial products. So think banks, but also.
So what about a certain credit reporting bureau from back in the day?
That's exactly right. Equifax in 2017, they used this exact same authority to get Equifax in 2017. That's what I think it was about a $800 million.
I want to break in because it was almost nothing, right? $700 million was, it's a pain in the ass.
To Equifax, that's nothing.
It was not a huge thing. Yeah. But I'll say, what name did we bring up when we first started talking about this? Right now, to this minute, what name did we just say? Right. We just said Equifax. It's indelible, and it's one of these things where we're starting to see the stigma aspect and the you don't care about my data aspect really mattering to people.
Right.
Exactly.
So that's exactly right.
I wanted to break in on that. But.
No, I think that's right. I think that's the biggest stick that the FTC carries is they can embarrass you in front of your customer base, and the penalty itself is not where the pain lands. The pain lands in sales and marketing and in your reputation overall. It's a larger business impact, and $700 million is going to get a headline. But it's the reputational impact that matters more.
You said something earlier, Tyler, where you said, what's our responsibility? And maybe taking it away from just being Pax8, but our being an entity's responsibility is really to know what's in your software, which is hard to do sometimes. The software bill of goods is really tough, especially when you're consuming something from someone else. But when you do have control over it, You should have a reasonable path to patch it. You should have a reasonable path to go forward. And I think one of the challenges I present is that technical debt is often the death to this, right? James Azar says that, there's this kind of nuance to patching and it's not that simple. And I think at a small scale, he's not correct. But at a large scale, when you start thinking enterprise, when you start thinking software developers or dependencies on software, you really get into this, what's in my control, what's not, what can I do? What does my technical debt limit me to? There's certain vendors out there that still have Chrome 57 binaries in the piece that connects you to financial, right? And those things are things where they're like, yeah, we can't move up because we're dependent on this stack and it requires this. What if Log4J's in that? Where does the reasonable person rule come into play, right? How does that play out? And I think that's what's kind of this, up for setting case precedents and up for setting some of those things of what settles and what goes to court and what turns into, case law. So curious thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So here's the thing, guys. The FTC is unlikely to push this through the finish line with anybody, right? It's going to be it's enough for them to start the investigation. They go public. There's everybody knows Equifax is in trouble with the FTC. That's the only thing that ultimately is going to matter. We're talking about the court of public opinion here. Yep. And so it's one of these areas where, from not necessarily from the lawyer's perspective of how do I win this case, but from the lawyer's perspective of how do I protect the company? The way I protect the company is to say, do everything in our control to patch what we can patch. If we need to change our tech stack in order to have a more secure version, then that's what we need to do.
Yes. Absolutely.
That sort of stuff.
Yes.
That's what.
All right, he's welcome to our table now, Dom. He can come join us in the security kids table now, right?
Yeah.
but that's what gives you that defensibility, where the FTC won't just drop something on you. They're not just going to drop an indictment, right? That's not how this is going to work. They're going to come to you and say, "Hey, we think you've got a problem here, and we're going to pursue action against you, and here's how we're going to go about it." And you can respond to them with, "Here's everything that we've done." And if you've done everything that's defensible, it's sort of, you've done what you need to do to be a reasonable actor, they're not going to waste their enforcement resources on you. What they're going to do is go to the next company that wasn't reasonable, that was lackadaisical, that didn't take the steps that they needed to take, and they're going to make an example out of them. Because they've got limited resources to pursue folks. And remember, their primary driver is driving behavior countrywide on this. So they're trying to make an example out of somebody or somebody's.
I want to take this down to an MSP. What does this matter? Like, if we take this as just a thought experiment, right? Because I don't think there's going to be very much FTC action against any of your moderate to large MSPs. I don't think you'll see it to a small MSP. I think it would have to be something very exemplary. So let's just take this as, what is the lesson? I think the lesson, you said it well, and at Pax8 we preach this a lot. It's all about defensibility. I say this all the time, and Dom says this all the time. Your job is not to protect your client's network. Your job is to be defensible in how you chose to protect your client's network. Your job is to be defensible. And when you start thinking of what are the components of defensible, you said it well, Tyler. You have the opportunity to respond with, here's all the things we've done, comma, space, and the proof thereof. Right? And you start getting into really doing it, really having the policies, really following them, really doing the patching, really checking for the failures, really saying where you have an incident in a POAM where you can't solve this right now, where you set that in front of the board, when do you start getting funding, those are the things that our MSPs can take lessons from. Those are the things that an MSP can just start documenting, writing policy, following policy, setting operational things, improving them, iterating over time. I think that's the reasonable person and reasonable actor, statement you make, right? So
that's absolutely right. And for an MSP, you're set in the middle of a software ecosystem, right? So So you can't control what your tech stack software vendors do, how they patch.
You can really influence them.
You certainly.
This is also an argument, though. This is an argument because there's a lot of MSPs like, oh, I wrote this myself, or I found this on GitHub, and this is how I run my business. This is a great example of why not to do that, right? Because now you're on the hook for that code when something like this goes down.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's also a huge attestation to use another person's IP, right? Because then they're on the hook. Plus everything that goes into managing that. But, it's a huge problem today.
Oh, that's absolutely right. And what you can do is demonstrate your diligence. That's really what we're talking about here, is demonstrating your diligence to a few different stakeholders, right? One is the FTC, because that's what we're worried about here now today.
Sure.
Another is the software vendors in your tech stack. I'm a good partner. I'm somebody that's going to help you out. I'm on your side. Let's get this done together. And then most importantly is your customers. You're demonstrating to them, I got your back. I'm working on this. I'm doing everything that I can. Here's some suggestions for what you need to do on what you've got going on. And then you're in that space where you've been diligent, you've been reasonable, you've
been a trusted advisor.
You're a trusted advisor.
Open, humble, transparent. I mean, Jesus, these are things that just make my heart sing, Tyler.
Yeah,
right?
no, because it's the right thing to do. I mean, you can't control the bad guys, and you can't control what the world does, but you can control what you can control to make it harder on them, and that's what the FTC wants to see. They want to see that you're doing.
In some ways, sorry, Tyler, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
In some ways, this destigmatizes some things, right? Like, do banks have stigmas when a robber walks in with a rifle and takes them over? Do they hide it? Do they want to not disclose it? Do they? Does bank? No, but they also wouldn't want to be that bank that didn't have the video system to record the robbery, that didn't have the alarm system to report it, that didn't have the connection to the FBI with the requisite resource. Like, none of that happens.
Right.
And I think what we're facing is we're in an unregulated industry with tons of immature consumers and tons of lack of this making it to the board level where things that need to be sprints that fix some legacy tech debt crap get the same priority of the next net revenue, right? And you start having those capabilities. And so, you speak of it in the way an attorney would, of here's your recommendation, you need to deal with this. I'm speaking of it once you sit in front of those board members, right? And it starts turning into, no, we have to put out platform. Platform's the next big thing. If we don't move that, yet you sit with some legacy tech debt that hasn't been solved, and you can't meet that reasonable person rule. Even if it's on a POAM, it can't be on a POAM for 20 years, right? That's a plan of action and milestones. The milestone can't be zero. I really think this is a nuanced conversation, but I think it's a good one to have. I don't want to make this run too long. We're kind of already at that 12-minute mark. If anybody has any closing thoughts, I think let's wrap it up. Dom, if not, let's close us out, buddy.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for joining us, everyone. We wanted to get this in front of you, get some different perspective for you. So I hope this is helpful. As always, interact, leave comments. We'll reply as we can, and we'll see you on the next one.
And if you ever want to join in the conversation, please reach out privately, and we'll try to get you brought into the loop. So thank you all so much. Tyler, I will expect a bill to the security team. So
it'll be in your inbox this afternoon, Matt.
I almost got my full 30 minutes, though, so I feel good about it. See you guys.
All right. See you guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
See ya.